This is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry site, and today we're here with Brandon Marshall. He is the head of sales and technical services with Zoetis Poultry. Thanks for being with us today, Brandon.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Zoetis announced that the USDA Center for Veterinary Biologics has granted an import permit for a modified live vaccine, Poulvac TRT, to address a growing need in the poultry industry. Avian metapneumovirus continues to pose a serious disease challenge to the U.S. poultry industry, especially turkey producers. Can you walk us through steps Zoetis has recently taken to help customers address this concern?
Yes, so I think first off, we at Zoetis, we have a deep respect and understanding for poultry producers and the challenges they face day in and day out. It's a challenging business as it is, and then when emerging diseases come along, it really impacts and challenges them even more. So, I think that if you look at the challenges they face with the avian metapneumovirus, it just continues to challenge them significantly. So at Zoetis, we're committed to try to bring solutions to the table to help address customer issues or needs, and especially in this case, emerging diseases. So we're very honored and really excited to be able to have a solution that was kind of already in our pipeline, in our global portfolio that
Right.
could help address this problem. So it's really exciting times for us that we can sort of fulfill our mission, right? To be there for our customers and help. And so we're really looking forward to the next steps here.
Great, Brandon. Can you describe the collaboration and commitment that went into gaining this approval from USDA's Center for Veterinary Biologics?
Yeah, and so this has been probably at least a year or more long process since this disease sort of reemerged in the U.S. And I would describe it as a very collaborative, industry aligning initiative.
Right.
It took everybody from our producers that were struggling with the issues within Zoetis. Our technical service veterinarian team worked very closely with producers to help isolate, diagnose, and really get their arms around what our customers were struggling with. At the same time, we are extremely appreciative of all the efforts from National Chicken Council, National Turkey Federation, UEP. Those allied memberships have really been sort of instrumental in working directly with CVB and the USDA to help bring these solutions, whether it be a killed product or a modified live, but to bring these solutions from outside the U.S. into the U.S. and make them available, which is really fantastic. It's fantastic for our customers.
It's amazing when the whole team comes together, right? Because you have to think of the industry as a whole team, I feel like.
Right. It's a very competitive market.
Right.
But in situations like this, what you see is that the passion and the resiliency of the entire industry kind of have these like non-competitive issues in which they sort of say, hey, this is an industry threat, and they kind of work together to really make solutions available.
It's the way it should work, right?
100%, correct.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for all the information.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're joined by Dr. Kalen Cookson. He is the Director of Clinical Research with Zoetis. Thanks for being with us today, Kalen.
Thanks for having me today.
Very good. And we're going to dive right into some questions here. What is avian metapneumovirus, and how does it impact poultry health and performance?
Well, first, it's a little bit of a mouthful.
I can attest to
and
that.
it goes by a number of acronyms. aMPV is what most people are using. That's the most generally applied term. But in the turkey industry, it's also known as TRT for turney rhinotracheitis.
Okay.
And in broilers, it's sometimes referred to as swollen head syndrome.
Okay.
So a number of different names it's called by, but the key thing is it's an upper respiratory virus, and it affects turkeys the most. They're the most susceptible, followed by chickens. And it has a real propensity for the upper, basically the head.
Okay.
It basically causes a really bad head cold. So it causes deciliation of the respiratory linings, and so that leads to a lot of upper respiratory symptoms, head shaking, conjunctivitis, swollen eyes, watery eyes, just coughing, just a lot of upper respiratory cold symptoms, and it usually leads to secondary bacterial infections, and that's what really causes an impact on performance, because then the turkeys, they get E. coli infections, they get ORT infections, and these are the infections that really persist. And so if you have a persistent head cold, you're going to be constantly fighting off disease. You're going to be taking away resources to put into meat production, and you're just going to be losing a lot of energy to fighting off disease, and a lot of times they can succumb to these secondary infections. And so we've seen mortality in turkeys this past year as high as 60%, which if you look at the textbooks, it's more like 30 to 40%. But I think that speaks to the fact that we haven't had any vaccines, so we have completely naive flocks being impacted.
And you've talked about some of the symptoms, but how quickly can it spread?
It spreads extremely efficiently. I would, for people that aren't familiar with this disease, especially people in the chicken industry, they're very familiar with infectious bronchitis. So it's very similar to that virus. It's also an upper respiratory virus. So while it can be inactivated, killed, disinfected very easily because it's a lipid envelope virus, but because it's lipid enveloped, also makes it very easy to transmit from bird to bird. So it's highly transmissible. And so also a lot like infectious bronchitis, problems occur or are greater in the wintertime. So it's a winter respiratory disease. It never really goes away, but it kind of goes a little bit more, it goes quiet. Like in the summer when you have better ventilation, you might have less survivability of the virus, from flock to flock. But in the wintertime, it builds up and builds up, and that's why we saw it really emerge last winter, and now it's coming back with a vengeance this winter.
And you kind of alluded to the fact that it can look like infectious bronchitis or perhaps Newcastle disease. Is this diagnostics are really going to be necessary with this, right, to identify what you're dealing with, because it might look like something else.
Right. So Newcastle would be a differential for this. Now turkeys don't get infectious bronchitis, so that's just really a good analog for the turkeys, and it shows how impactful it can be. But like bronchitis, we have PCR tests that are readily available. Our lab is developing our own primers, so we'll be able to help our customers, both check for vaccine takes, as well as survey for, incidents of disease and when the window of challenge is occurring, those kind of things.
Can you tell us about Zoetis's Poulvac TRT vaccine that was recently granted an import permit for use in the United States?
So there are really two vaccination options for this disease. There are modified live vaccines, and there are inactivated vaccines. So ours is a modified live vaccines. There are more than two types, but prevalently there are types A and B, and that's what we're seeing in the United States. That's what they see in Europe, Brazil, where our vaccine we've had our vaccine for about 20 years and has been integral to turkey programs in both Europe and Brazil. Live vaccines are really critical, and that's where the industry really came forward and made that point to CVB that we can't solve and protect our birds just with kill vaccines. When we're raising birds for meat production, we don't have the opportunity to individually handle the birds except in the hatchery at the first day, which is where we have a great opportunity to apply the live vaccines. The kill vaccines will be very helpful for long-lived birds, so breeder-type birds, both in turkeys and in chickens. But the live vaccines are extremely important where birds are more susceptible the younger they are as well.
Okay.
So that's why we're happy to be one of several live vaccines that will be available to the market.
Very good. Well, thank you, Kalen, for all the information today. This is really helpful and a new tool for the industry.
Thank you.
This is Sarah Mikesell with the Poultry Site.